so much of her past roaring back, as if someone were flipping the pages of a very familiar book right in front of her face. She could already see her aunt's huge old manor in her head, its spires and huge windows in her mind's eye. She saw the sea, so large and impossibly deep to the mind of the child she's once been. She could picture the house so well because it had, after all, been the inspiration for her bread and breakfast pipe dream. She had not seen her aunt in nearly 2 years, but she was going to miss her. Still, she was honestly a little bothered by the fact that old manor stood out more than her memories of aunt. Yes, there were the scones and Olun tea, relentless pranks and jokes that had gone on for weeks, but the house had been the heart of it all. Marie had spent forever in June's, June is her aunt, in June's sitting room library, while June and her mother talked and drank wine or brandy in a den. She had run through the halls and slid down the balcony. She chuckled again, marveling at how strange the mind reacted to the death of loved ones. At least the funeral isn't Port Bliss, she thought. Knowing June, she likely had a bunch of different odd locations in mind for this event. The idea of a funeral was of course really sad, especially great Aunt June's funeral. The old bird had acted as if she might live forever, in addition to jokes of bottle rockets and makeup model for morticians. June had also talked about being cryogenically frozen. She had talked on and on about how some baseball player and Walt Disney were supposed to be frozen somewhere. As Marie neared Port Bliss, she realized that what she was feeling was not nostalgia. Not exactly. She didn't know if there was a singular word for that sensation of a feeling, like you were going back home to a place that wasn't actually home, but that's what she felt. She figured there was a Japanese word for it because the Japanese had a word for everything. Another thing occurred to her while thoughts of Aunt June crossed her mind. She thought the timing of it all was cosmic in a way. Maybe Aunt June was grinning, whatever she was right now, knowing her death had softened the blow of a failed relationship. She wouldn't put something like that past June. Actually, she had no problem picturing June haunting Chris's apartment just out of spite. It made Marie smile. Just reminding you, Chris is our main character's ex-boyfriend who cheated on her. Through all of these memories, she had somehow come to and then driven across the second bridge. Port Bliss sat to the right, almost entirely out of sight. seemed to promise it on the backside of the property. With her arms trembling slightly, she turned into the driveway. As the house grew bigger in the windshield, more memories of the place came swimming to the surface of her mind. She remembered sleeping in the upstairs guest room, Aunt June tucking her in after reading one of her weird bedtime stories. She could even remember the curtains in the room, thin purple things that made everything in the room look a strange shade of grape when the sun came through. She remembered the huge conch shell in the powder room, sitting on top of the toilet, and how she would listen to the roar of the ocean in it when she did her business. Unable to hear it very well, she remembered Aunt June telling her that once shells were too far away from the ocean for too long, it lost its ties to the water and therefore was unable to remember the sound. This particular conch shell, though, according to Aunt June, would occasionally play Elvis Presley's Blue Suede Shoes. If you listen hard enough. She parked in front of the house and stared. There it was, the inspiration for her make-believe bed and breakfast, and the nexus of her best childhood memories. She nearly got out and went up onto the porch and thought that might be pushing it. She wasn't sure what rules were when it came to properties and banks and recently deceased eccentric old ladies. She sat there, anchored somewhere between joy and sadness. Everything was as she remembered it. It was as if time had frozen since the last time she'd been here 20 or so years ago. She'd nearly visited when she learned that June had fallen and broken her ankle, but by the time her plans were made, June was healed and had left on a trip to Stockholm. Because of that missed visit, the only time she'd seen her aunt had been 2 years ago when June had visited her in Providence on her way through during another of her trips. Other than that, Dad's only spoken on the phone. There had also been 2 awkward Skype calls when June spent half the time griping about how she hated technology. It all looked so much the same that she found herself scanning the yard for mutated cats that looked like squirrels. She wasn't sure how long she sat there. She stared at the house, its influence falling on her like a shadow. It had a Victorian sort of vibe, with miniature spires and cone-shaped ceilings. The outside was mostly brick, faded with time and growing patches of moss here and there. Up close, the spooky quality, like so many of the neighborhood kids had attributed to it, was gone. Being so close, the house seemed warm and inviting. She didn't realize how much she had missed it until she cranked her car and shifted into reverse. straightened her car out. Marie looked back, giving the house one last glance. As she did, the sunlight struck one of the windows along the front of the old manor, and for a moment it looked like the house was winking at her like it had a secret it refused to tell. She wondered if Aunt June had kept any secrets. It was a daunting prospect, because she had been such a private woman. But with funeral coming up, Marie couldn't help but think she might hear about some of those secrets from the lips of strangers, and how it might affect her memories of June. What the hell are you looking at? This was how June Fortune began her final message to the world. She scowled out to 40 or so people gathered around the flat television in the multi-purpose room of the local community church. Slowly, June's face morphed into a smile, beaming out to those who had come to celebrate her life. There were several harsh laughs and chuckles. There was more laughter as June spent the next 12 minutes telling everyone why she had not mourned her passing, but instead celebrated her long life. While she did talk about going to better places, she joked about she'd been perfectly fine, spent eternity in Montego Bay. She spent most of her time teasing everyone about how long her life had been. When the video was done, there were tears and laughter all around. It was the absolute perfect way to remember great Aunt June. That woman had gone out on her terms in her own house and had delivered a goodbye worthy of a stand-up comedy special. Marie was no stranger to loss. Her father had died when she was 20. Before that, her mother had seemed to walk right off the face of the planet when Marie was just 14. Marie had also been to the funeral of her best friend's grandmother while in high school, but something about great Aunt June's funeral and wake seemed just surreal. People like June wasn't supposed to die. The service that followed was held in a small community center that looked out over the ocean. Everyone gathered out on the back patio. There was a lot of wine and even more desserts. Swing music from 40s and 50s was played over the sound system. Marie tried to enjoy it all, but the sudden interruptions by people she barely remembered or didn't know at all, that made it all difficult. She didn't participate in the conversations, though she smiled and nodded when appropriate. A crazy woman, that June. One misty-eyed older gentleman told her. But the good sort of crazy, you know. I honestly thought she'd never die, added a stout woman in her 50s. That woman was a firecracker for sure. Speaking of firecracker, did you know she seriously toyed with the idea of being cremated and having her ashes shoved into fireworks? I'd say I don't believe it, but it seems like something she would do, alright. It made Mary happy to hear people sharing stories about her aunt. It was quite clear that hardly anyone there knew who she was. A few people approached her and asked how she knew June. Apparently she was my great aunt didn't really mean much, as it didn't get much conversation You know, it's supposed to be haunted. Ghost from shipwrecks, I read. And there was more laughter. The laughter was good to hear as Maria looked out to the ocean. The house was about a mile and a half away, right up to the coast. She figured that she was going to have to be a little more social if she wanted to find a way to get into the house. She figured it would be a very nice way to re-energize herself before returning to the real world and facing the fact that she was now without a job or a boyfriend. But she found it hard to look away from the ocean. It seemed to call her for a moment, asking her to stay a while. Staring at it, she was wondering, not for the first time, what it would have been like to grow up here. After all, her father died, and June had extended an invitation for her to stay with her aunt until she was firmly on her feet. Marie could not help but wonder how different her life might have turned out if she had accepted. At the time, she'd figured Aunt June was just being polite and kind. But after hearing the video message she had left behind, she realized she had forgotten just how spontaneous and spunky June had really been. Yeah, she could absolutely leave and board bliss. It would make for a sort of beautiful full circle moment. Of course, she had no job and little less than $11,000 in savings. She didn't even want to guess what the rent was like in here. But the more determined part of her thought she could find a job and maybe start over here, with a shadow of Aunt June's manner always falling over her. It would certainly help to motivate her. It couldn't be too hard to find a suitable job somewhere like Port Police, right? It was an enticing thought. It was so enticing that it got her moving, hoping to find someone to point her in the direction of June's attorney. As it turned out, she didn't have to look for very long. A voice stopped her as she made her way back into the community center. "Excuse me, ma'am." At first she assumed it would be someone else asking how she had known June. She turned and saw a man standing behind her, keeping a respectful distance. He was dressed in an expensive-looking suit, but nothing too flashy given the event. His hair, starting to go grey at the temples, was combed back tightly, and he carried a briefcase. "Yes?" Marie asked. "You are Marie, right? Marie Fortune." "That's me," she said. She assumed it was one of June's friends who remembered her from childhood visits. "And you are?" "My name is Malcolm Carey. I'm your Aunt June's attorney." "Oh, is there something wrong?" "No, not at all. I hate to approach you here and now, given everything that is going on. Some may see it as unprofessional, but I wasn't sure how long you're gonna stay in Port Bliss, and it's important that I speak to you. Is now a good time?" "As good as any, I guess." "Maybe out in a parking lot," Carrie suggested. "I'd rather not go through this in the presence of everyone else." They walked out to the parking lot and sat on a bench just to the right of the entrance stairs. Carrie opened up his briefcase and took out several forms and a thin stack of papers. "As I'm sure you know, June did not have family around here, I was thinking maybe I could actually not whisper with chapter 5. Maybe I could actually speak up a little bit. But I guess at some point I will be whispering, and at some point I will be, well, you can hear my voice, if that's okay. In the comments, I would really appreciate if you tell me what you would rather prefer, for me to give you a bit of voice or to continue whispering, because to me it's important to see, to understand what is your preference, what actually relaxes you better, what gets you all, dizzy, I guess. Well, that's just me being positive. Right, let's start. Chapter 5. Marie asked, "Special?" Carrie smiled and nodded as he handed her one of the stacks of paper he'd been holding. She looked at it, but it was all legal mumbo-jumbo. It might as well have been written in Greek. "What is this?" she asked. "It's a very special part of her will and testament." He scanned down 3 paragraphs and pointed to a line with his finger. He read out it out loud as Marie followed along. "And to my great niece I also leave my home located on 101 Crackable Road. This includes the 4 acres surrounding land and beachfront." Marie felt herself growing dizzy. Surely she'd had him wrong. Sorry, that was my door in the wind. Surely she would had him wrong. Or maybe it was a joke. Maybe Great Aunt June was playing one more prank on her. This time something much more serious than a potentially radioactive cat. Still, she found herself placing her hands along the edge of the bench just to anchor herself to reality. "Are you sure?" she asked. The last time I spoke to her, she had made up her mind to donate it to some organization or another. "Oh yes, I know. The house was originally going to go to a maritime organization. She had grand plans of having a local maritime preservation group turn it into a museum all about shipwrecks." "Sounds about right to June." "Yes, well, it was that way up until 2 weeks ago. June called my office and asked to make some revisions to the will. There was only a single one, actually, and it was having you left as the owner of the house." "Are you sure?" Carrie smiled. "I am. It's all right there in the will." June left her manner to you, Marie." She started chuckling, a noise that quickly turned into soft weeping. The unlimited possibilities of what this meant started to pile up in her head, and she could not make any sense in any of it. It was like a huge mound of freshly raked fall leaves waiting to be jumped into. "But what's the catch?" she asked. Carrie answered, "Well, it's haunted, didn't you know?" Marie gaped at him. Carrie giggled at himself, shaking his head. "I'm just kidding, I'm sorry. Though I'm sure you know the rumors." "Probably all of them." "Anyway, no, there is no catch. It's yours. There is some paperwork to be done in protest, but that's just a formality." He paused and then added, "Are you okay?" She said, "Yeah," staring at the documents. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to break out into a little joyful dance right there in the parking lot. But that probably wasn't appropriate behavior for a wake. "This can't be really happening," she thought. "Would it be weird if I asked you to pinch me?" "A bit, I suppose, but I can if you like." "Never mind. So, is it okay for me to head over there right now and look around?" "Indeed, but first there is also this." Carrie reached back into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope. Marie's name was written neatly, directly in the center. She opened it slowly, her hands trembling. There was a single sheet of paper inside, folded in thirds. When Marie unfolded it, she found a short handwritten note. As she read over it, the handwriting leaning harshly to the left, it was easy to imagine June writing it. The letter read, "Marie, if you are reading this, I am dead. Sorry about that. Also, I'm sorry to dump the old place off on you. But I thought it would be better in your hands than somewhat political and prissy hands of a bunch of history buffs. Take good care of the place and watch out for those mutated radioactive cats. There's a lot of them in the spring. Oh, and by the way, as if the house weren't a surprise enough, there is one other surprise I think you'll appreciate waiting for you too. Much love, June." She thought, another surprise? Marie wasn't sure her heart could handle any more surprises. She was having an issue understanding that the house she had once been slightly obsessed with now was hers. If the surprises kept piling on, she thought her heart might just explode. Maybe this is what it's like to be happy as an adult, she thought. "So, can I go and look around?" she asked. Again, she was waiting for some sort of a last-minute psych out. It would be sort of fitting given June's personality. Carrie said, "Of course." He went back into the briefcase and produced another envelope, though this one was significantly smaller than the first, and handed it to Marie. When Marie opened it, she found 2 keys inside. Marie slid them into her hand. They clanked together musically. She stared at them for a while, starting to feel that this was really happening. "It's okay," Carrie said, perhaps finally understanding her confusion. "Go on, go visit your new property." Right, now we're going to chapter 6. If you don't mind, I'm going to carry on with my voice, please. I actually hope that with my voice, reading actually makes a bit more sense. I mean, contents of my reading make more sense. Pardon me, because when I listened to my whispering back of this particular book, I found that some bits and pieces were a bit mushy. Maybe you're gonna like actually with the voice added to it. Anyway, like I said, can you please let me know in the comments which one you prefer, my voice or my whispering? Perhaps you would like to tell me I should read slower when I whisper, or maybe slower when I give it my voice. Anyway, thank you. Let's begin chapter 6. When she brought her cat to the winding driveway off a crabbable road, 20 minutes later, Marie was overcome with the feeling that she was trespassing. She was driving towards the house with the intent now, not just longing and excitement. She thought, "You're thinking big girl thoughts." She nearly laughed out loud as this unexpected little saying filled her head. It was something her father used to tell her whenever she started questioning something, or bringing up doubts about what she had learned in school. Marie had been the one kid in school who in 3rd grade had quickly pointed out that maybe Christopher Columbus wasn't the big hero he was made out to be, but instead a bully that kind of sort of took stuff that wasn't his. It was a personality trait that had followed her through the rest of her life, and she had not thought of that saying in many years. When she parked in front of the house, she stood outside of her car for a moment, just looking at it. The grey shutters felt calm and relaxing. That old porch The old porch swing that should have long ago been taken out of a commission still looked as strong as ever. Thin flower beds traced the porch, filled with lilacs, wilted morning glories. Oddly enough, the flowers did not seem to brighten the exterior of the house, at all, but did add to the warm and welcoming calm the grace of the shutters and the front door gave off. Marie grinned. It was fitting for Aunt June to have a home that came off as polarizing. Warm and inviting to some, while creepy and a little ominous to others. Marie took a deep breath and started forward. She wasn't scared. She could never feel anything resembling fright when it came to this house, despite the rumors. Aunt June had lived here, and it was the home of so many cherished childhood memories. So she wasn't scared. She just felt jumpy. She smiled, enjoying the tangle of emotions and the trip back through memory lane that was about to come full circle. She stepped onto the porch and, using one of the keys Carrie had given her, opened the door. It swung open easily, as if it had always been waiting for her. Seeing the inside of the house for the first time in 20 years, Marie wondered if it had always looked so ominous. Creepy was too strong a word, but it was similar. It made her think less of Scooby-Doo, but more of Ghostbusters. June had really gone all in on the Gothic style. The hardwood floors were quite dark, mostly covered by gorgeous rugs that boasted grey and black patterns. The chandelier that Marie remembered from her childhood hung down from the high ceiling of the foyer. It too was beautiful, but also had a ghostly charm to it. It was the sort of place she imagined Edgar Allan Poe might have hunkered down to write about hearts beating in walls and ravens harassing people. But only if Poe was a goofball at heart. Any ghosts that may have ever haunted this place had rattled chains, but probably chuckled or constantly blew on those party horns, where the end was made of paper and came flying out at you. Marie walked to the end of the foyer and looked to the left. She knew what was waiting there. The sitting room June and her mother had spent so much time in. Marie herself had spent a lot of time in that room, filling coloring books and pretending to read all Nancy Drew paperbacks while listening to June and her mother gossip about the locals. Marie stepped into the sitting room. It was tidy and dark. The only light filling the place came in through a space in a large curtain over the window, slightly opened in the center. The bookcases were the same, bursting with old paperbacks that covered everything from the poetry of William Blake to the fiction of Daniel Steele. Most of the furniture was new. There was a grandiose armchair that looked almost like a miniature throne. A little reading table sat next to it. There were little embedded water rings on the face of the table, some in the perfect shape of the bottom of a thin wine glass. Marie breathed the room in and felt a surge of emotion, wanting to be released and exchanged. She thought, gotta get out of here. The funeral and wake were enough. No sense in getting smacked in the feels here too. She exited the sitting room through the large archway in the back of the room. This took her into the dining room, complete with a table that could seat 12 people. A large china cabinet sat against the far wall, holding an assortment of plates, cups, and glasses that did not really match. Marie toured the remainder of the house in the same fashion. There were 2 bathrooms, one of which, just off the master bedroom, was half the size of Marie's apartment back in Providence. She walked upstairs, her hand running along the banister she had slid down countless times as a girl. There were 3 bedrooms upstairs, one of which had been turned into some sort of office that made no real sense to Marie. There was an old typewriter sitting on a beautiful desk. A piece of paper was rolled into it in a small stack of papers set off to the side. All the paper was blank, making Marie wonder if June had been tinkering with the idea of writing a book. She certainly had the spark and spirit to take on such an endeavor. Well, she had possessed that sort of energy. She was gone now, and standing in the midst of her large and empty house seemed to bring that fact home. This poor house. Like June, it was quite unique, and now she was going to be forced to sell it, which could be huge for her. She wondered how much she could get for it. It was quite old and had a certain charm to it, and it was right on the beach. That sort of money could change her life. In the same time, Marie hated the idea of the house going to some random family. Its history and stories would be buried with June. Oh, only what if? She told herself, oh, don't you get there. There was something churning in the back of her mind, some idea that she was afraid to look at head on. You are thinking big girl thoughts. You don't know the half of it, Dad. Marie was on the 2nd floor, standing in the hallway that led back to the stairs. A half-picture window stood in the wall just in front of the stairs. She looked out and saw the ocean, twinkling in the afternoon sun. The golden strip of the beach looked like a huge welcome mat, as far as she was concerned. She supposed some may see this complete opposite of the layout and design of the house, but, well, there was something charming in the composition of it all, wasn't there? It might be just the thing that would make for a pretty unique bed and breakfast. There, the thought was fully realized, ticking the edges of her brain. She continued exploring the house, arriving at the spare bedroom she'd spent a few nights as a kid. The arrangement of the room was the same, though the freely pink bed sheets had been replaced by simply maroon-colored dressing. The bedside table was the same, as was the little bookshelf and picture of 3 kids building a sandcastle on a stormy stretch of beach. She walked to the bed and sat down on it. With a smirk on her face, she opened up the bedside table drawer. Her heart stopped beating for a moment at what she saw was inside. For a moment, she was 10 years old again. She reached into the drawer and took out the only item inside. It was the little doll she'd played with when she visited. There had been several of them, but this one was her favorite. It was a Barbie knockoff, only in the form of a little girl. Barbie had Skipper, so she had named this one a Dipper. She held Dipper in her hands, feeling tears welling up. She was dressed in a little tacky floral skirt Marie had dressed her in nearly 30 years ago. Time and neglect had faded it a bit, just like Dipper's brown hair, but it just felt the same. That's weird. What are the chances June kept this doll here all this time? Maybe this was the surprise June mentioned in her letter. If so, it was an odd one, but June had been an old lady, so Marie just wasn't sure. She never remembered June being the sentimental type, but Dipper was right there, as if she had been waiting for her owner to return one day. It was almost like Dipper was trying to tell her something. She looked at the doll, eye to eye, and said it out loud this time. A place like this would make a pretty cool bed and breakfast, huh? The thought of it made her heart race. But on the heels of it was the reality of it all. It would take some money and some time. It would certainly take more than what she currently sat in her savings account. On the other hand, how much work would really need to be done? Surely there were few places that flirted with being goth rather than Victorian traditional Gothic, but was it really so bad? The furniture had charm to it, there was plenty of open space, and the allure of the sitting room downstairs alone was very strong. Yet it was a tempting idea. Her dream, pretty much handed to her by a deceased great aunt, was right here. "You are thinking big girl thoughts," her father again sounded in her head. "Damn right I am," she said, looking around the room. Suddenly, the weight of the idea seemed like too much. She got up quickly, still holding Dipper in her hand, and headed back downstairs. She didn't realize how fast she was walking until she reached the bottom of the stairs and then the front door. She stepped back out onto the porch, made her way down the stairs. She stood in front of the house, listening to the ocean sighing behind it. She felt the sun on her face, smelled the sea air, and started to calm down. It was temporary, though. As she started back towards the porch, something came blasting out from underneath the porch. Whatever it was coming right for her. She screamed as she slammed into it, knocking her to the ground. I'll have to actually repeat the sentence because I think I read it wrong. She screamed as it slammed into her, knocking her to the ground. Here you go. And that is the end of our third chapter for today. If you like it, can you please put a like for this video? If you like how I read it, please comment and subscribe. And I'm looking forward to reading to you soon. 3 more chapters.